You always
like
pick a slow one.
It's hit and miss with this music, isn't it?
Right. It definitely is. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, November 24th, aka Thanksgiving Eve. And so we are doing our supply chain show, which is kind of appropriate considering that, of course, our national holiday shopping day of the year or days of the year. We have Black Friday coming up this Friday, and of course there will be lots of probably chaos at the malls and the Walmarts and the Targets and everything in between. And then you have, of course, Cyber Monday this coming Monday. So you have two of the biggest hot shopping days of the year, and definitely when a lot of retailers make a whole lot. I've heard as much as 40% of the revenue comes from the next 4 or 5 days. Wow. which is just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, welcome everyone to Coffee Pan Dulce. I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, who did our wonderful introduction there, and Mama Ruth, who is not with us tonight, Barbara Bacon, who is doing some wonderful holiday things, and Stephen DeFiore. We want to welcome you. As Jenny said, today's topic is going to be about the supply chain. We actually touched on the supply chain a couple of shows ago, maybe a month ago. Is that right? When we had the Small Business Association.
Oh, that was like first week of October. Actually, that's been almost 2 months. Next week it'll be 2 months.
That's right. Yeah. And then we also had Manolo, our producer, sponsor, and supplier, was on, and also that was Michael from the SBA, and then Chad from the small Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, LGBT Chamber of the Carolinas is their official new name.
That's right.
And they have taken over a regional role over about, I believe it's 7 communities in North and South Carolina. They've done such a wonderful job in Charlotte, and they are expanding commerce and business and also advocating for the LGBT community at the same time. And have done probably one of the biggest supporters and organizations that help pass the non-discrimination ordinances here in Mecklenburg County and the city of Charlotte. So, and do a lot of other wonderful work and work with the city of Charlotte and the other sibling chambers like the Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, of course, the Greater Business Alliance, which is the main, mothership of business, all things business. And they've done a lot of wonderful work in this greater Charlotte area, which is always necessary to create jobs and create opportunities. So
exactly, which this may have been a good show to have them back, because today's topic, as Jenny said, is the supply chain. What is the supply chain? We'll be talking about that as much as we can. We were hoping to have our co-host Barbara Bacon, because she spent so many years in the pharmaceutical company, that she could explain the supply chain, because there's no shortage of drugs. So
apparently not. Both street and pharmaceutical
prescription. That's right. I'm going to be clear here.
Which has a very funny point to it. I can't remember. I think it was amosexual Lauren Barbert from Colorado, one of the Trump acolytes.
Oh, yes.
It was mouthed off the other day. They busted like, I don't even know how many tons of drugs. It was fentanyl and weed, flippies and floppies and all kinds of stuff, like it was up in the tonnage that they stopped in one of the southern border crossings. And she goes, well, think about how much better if we actually had a secure border. And I'm like, well, isn't that just the opposite? And because we have a secure border, I got caught at the border. Like, I mean,
exactly. If it wasn't secure, we wouldn't have caught it. Exactly.
Well, it'd be in people's arms and noses by now. So
it's they're always gonna. Anyway, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started, Jenny, if you don't mind.
Yes,
and also, let's go around the Brady Bunch screen. It's just you and I carrying the show today. Jenny, introduce yourself and any imaginary button you have.
Obviously, hi, I'm Jenny-Jaymes Gunn once again, and my imaginary buttons would be a long list, and I can name them all off. Obviously, the work of being an anti-racist and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, is first and foremost. Of course, my LGBT family is always near and dear to my heart. I am a board member of the National Organization for Women Charlotte chapter. So definitely always believe women, support women of all intersectionality of women, including trans women, cis women, and non-binary women. Feminism, anybody can be a feminist. It's just supporting women. And I mean, Christian can be a feminist. It's not reserved to just women or feminine identities, and it's just supporting people that have traditionally been affected by misogyny and unfair wages and many other things. So those, I mean, environment is always on my mind. Stopping mass incarceration, stopping the drug war, stop funding violence. I mean, we could go on and on. We could have a whole show just on our imaginary buttons.
Exactly, that's right.
But I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And once again, I'm Christian Cano. Now, full disclosure, we have been taping this show the night before, so I am actually on the road, which is why I have to apologize. I forgot my jacket and my clothes. I was too casual. So this is the first time in 167 shows I have not worn a jacket. So wow. Just to let you know. And
well, I thought you looked different. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I thought, well, maybe because they're on the road, and it's kind of holidays. So I thought you were kind of going like.
This is how I dress for. Well, this is how I dress for our second show that we're going to tape after this one, the Two Queers in a Truck show. So I was sitting down. I said, "Where's the jacket? Oh, that's back in Charlotte." Anyway, so this is how I probably normally look. This is how Jenny sees me all the time. My imaginary buttons would be if I had my jacket with the buttons on it already. Medicare for all or healthcare for all, Moms in Action, gun sense legislation, and also Black Lives Matter as well. So we're going to talk about 3 current events before we get into our topic about the supply chain. But before we do that, let's salute to Coffee Pan Dulce. Salute. I'm drinking water and an adult beverage on the side that Jenny busted me before we started recording. She saw it. So it's Taco Tuesday. Hey, technically, but this is dropping on Wednesday. And then we also want to thank Manolo's Bakery, our producer sponsor. This is the first time in 167 shows that I forgot the Pan Dulce. It's an omen. So I've got it in the background. So Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue. Please support, if you don't have your tamale order already for Thanksgiving, you may be too late, but you can still get it in for Christmas. Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue, tamales, bread, all that you need for the holidays. They're known for their tres leche cakes and tamale. They're known for so many things. Anyway, support all your Black and brown businesses during this global pandemic during the holidays. So with that said, the 3 topics we want to talk about, the current events are, there's two jury awards that we have. Jenny gave me some notes before the show. 2 jury awards that have been issued over the last couple of days. One of them, I believe, in the Parkland shooting. The other one is in the Charlottesville situation. That one was dropped today, I believe. The white supremacists that were on trial for a civil case, they were being sued by some of the people that were injured and killed, the one person, the family that was killed in that horrible incident in Charlottesville, Virginia. Also, the Build Back Better plan, President Biden's passed, I believe that was Friday night or Saturday. It passed on Saturday. The House bill passed on Saturday, which is actually a pretty big event. People don't realize how hard it was to get all Democrats to vote for it, except one did not vote for it, but it was enough to pass. So now it's in the Senate. They're hoping that they can convince Lady Manchin to see the light and agree to certain things. But my understanding is 90% of it has already been agreed upon, and they're pretty confident they may be able to get it passed before Christmas. They're hoping. And that's the second thing. The next thing is here in North Carolina, which is where our show broadcasts from, in Charlotte, North Carolina. U.S. Senate candidate Erica Smith, who was one of the top 3 people running for the Democratic nominee for Senate to take Burr's place in Senate, who's retiring in 2022, announced on Friday. She technically announced officially today, but people started to find out on Friday Butterfield, who is a congressperson from North Carolina, the 5th highest ranking Democrat in the caucus, is retiring because of redistricting. His seat is no longer 100% safe Democrat. It's now what they call a toss-up. So I guess he's afraid he's going to lose. So he decided to retire. Well, she has made a decision to pull out of the Senate race and is now going to run for the North Carolina congressional seat number 2, which puts her the front runner by far, because she used to be a state senator in 7 of the counties of that district she used to represent. She was also a school teacher, and she was born in that district on a farm. So those are the 3 topics. Jenny, I know you have a lot to say about those. So where do you want to start?
Well, hey, first and foremost, both with the Charlottesville settlement against the white supremacists and the Parkland shooting settlement, that the federal government, the FBI, actually got sued. The Justice Department got sued because it did not follow up on some leads that Nicholas Cruz was planning on shooting up the school, and made several other threatening statements, including brandishing firearms on social media sites. Both settlements were monumental for many reasons. For one, it's holding entities accountable for violence, which is always good. And the second thing is that I think it's going along the path of starting to hold. I think what we need is to start holding firearm companies accountable for this as well. I think if you're going to be part of the supply chain of violence, then you should be able to be liable for product misuse as well. As far as Erica Smith, I'm excited for her to be in Congress. I would love to see her win that district. I think it's very winnable. The only reason she wasn't a returning state senator is because she didn't run so that she could run for U.S. Senate in the Tillis race last year. And of course, she lost to the eventual nominee, Cal Cunningham, in a very controversial race.
And she, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jenny. This is your time. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And so, I'm glad to see that she has but there's not going to be even another Democrat that's going to run against her, because she is so well known in that district. She teaches in that area. She's a beloved daughter of that area. I think anybody would be a fool to run against her, because she's so well known and has such a high profile now. And I wish her the best of luck. I've met Erica Smith several times, and I think the world of her, and I would love to see her face and her representation of her district in Washington, D.C. I think that'd be a phenomenal win for everybody. And the third topic was
Build Back Better.
Build Back Better. I think Biden's method to his madness, or whoever is quarterbacking this, has done a phenomenal job, considering everything that we went through the previous 4 years.
Because we thought it was dead. I mean, not dead, but but people were saying, how they were dysfunctional. The Democrats couldn't get, anyway.
They've been saying that about Sleepy Joe all year. And the more he takes naps, the more he wins, it's like the rabbit and the tortoise. And President Biden is just that tortoise that just keeps his same pace and doesn't get ruffled and doesn't have the narcissistic rage inflammations like the previous guy. And he just keeps winning. He just keeps winning, whether it is another court case, trying to do another recount, and he always ends up higher in the vote count, or we look at all the monumental legislation that President Biden has passed through since his inauguration, and how he's guided our country out of a pandemic, how he just every move got us out of Afghanistan and transported over 100,000 people out of there to safety. And just everything he's touching is like gold. And I don't care how the Republicans or any other nut job wants to spin it. The dude just keeps winning. And he almost won by 8 million votes, by the way. So, I love it. I love it for him. I love it most of all, importantly, for our country, because the stuff that passed the House on the beginning of the weekend is groundbreaking. It's revolutionary. It's stuff we should have passed years ago, and
Exactly.
luckily Joe's made it a priority.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. The jury awards, I didn't know about the Parkland one until you told me right before the show, but the jury award in Charlottesville that was handed down today, it was $26 million. The jury awarded the plaintiffs, which were the victims of the white supremacist rally. They sued civilly, and also the family of the young lady who was murdered or killed by the white supremacists who ran into the crowd. They, a lot of the white supremacists actually represented themselves because they wanted to use it as a platform to spread hate, and it backfired because the jury, ruled against them, which is hopefully, they're going to go after them every time they form a group. They're going to go after them. The Build Back Better, I thought that really surprised me. I was very, very surprised. I had heard that they were going to vote on it Friday night, and then what's the GOP majority leader?
Minority leader.
Yeah, what's the minority leader's name? The California. He's the squall.
Yeah, he's
I can't stand him. Yeah. He did like an 8-hour filibuster. So he did the longest filibuster in history.
Actually, that started
Nancy Pelosi.
Thursday.
Yeah,
I think it started Thursday night.
Yeah,
at 10 o'clock at night, and he made it till about mid-morning Friday, and then he gave up the ghost, and then they voted. Then they worked it out, and they voted
to vote on Saturday.
Or Saturday or whatever.
Yeah,
and it was funny because what's his face, the alleged pedophile, Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
First tweeted at 10 o'clock at night, oh yeah, he was urging McCarthy.
That's Kevin McCarthy. Yeah.
And the next morning he gave up the ghost. He was saying how weak McCarthy is and all that. I'm like, dude, he just went 12, like 8 or 12 hours or whatever it was.
I think it was 8 hours. 8 hours.
I was like, just because you were flipping through kitty magazines or whatever you were doing and getting a bag of roofies ready for the weekend, it's like I get it, but it didn't really achieve anything because
it didn't.
Build Back Better won.
Basically, what it did is it moved the vote to prime time Saturday afternoon, which got a lot more attention. But it was an incredible vote. I have a lot. Everyone was. I heard the progressives, I heard the moderates, they were all saying that they believe everyone got what they wanted. This is negotiation. This is what we've talked about. This is how legislation works. You negotiate. It was passed. They kept asking them, are you concerned about Manchin and Cinnamon, whatever? I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Cinnamon Toast.
Cinnamon Toast. And they
That's
said,
their stripper name.
And they basically said, well, if they'd like to make it better, we'd listen to it. It was very great talking points. You can tell they finally are on the same page and they're hoping to get it passed. But more importantly, and I thought this is very interesting, the Republican Party hates this bill so much because they don't want anything good to happen under Biden. And they hate it so much that they're trying to knock it because they know how deadly it would be. He passed the COVID relief. He passed the infrastructure. This would be a three-legged stool that he's passed. No one has ever done this much legislation. And it would, plus he's now going to be releasing, I believe, 250 million gallons of gas over the next couple of months to lower gas prices from our.
So this is actually on the supply chain subject.
Yeah, exactly.
He is releasing, it's actually 50 million barrels of oil, crude oil.
Yes,
we have what we call a national reserve. In case of specific emergencies, things of that nature, upon the executive branch's discretion, they can release the oil and quote unquote flood the market a little bit more, or if there's a huge supply chain issue, they can dip into that too. But we keep a national reserve of oil on tap, almost like an oil bank account. For it could be a natural debt. They did it. W did it back when Katrina hit, because when Katrina hit, you also have to remember there was a ton of oil platforms there in the Gulf,
and refineries and everything.
And they had to shut those down, move those platforms out of harm's way, and prepare for the Category 5 storm that it was. So there's been many times when this has happened. I think Reagan did it a couple times. I think almost all presidents,
but Jenny, I really
have
like
done it many times.
Yeah, I really like the way he did it, because what he did was he asked OPEC, please increase your supply, and they rebuffed him. They didn't do it. He was being patient, and then he said, all right, I'm going to release the oil. They didn't think he'd do it.
I'll do it myself.
Yeah. So well, I think it's great. I can tell you, when I left here in West Afghanistan, the last time I was here, AKA Texas, gas was $3.09. And because of this announcement, when I came up here, it's $2.82 here now.
Right.
Is that crazy? In 1 week.
So I've got mixed feelings about this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna poo-poo what Biden did. I think it was a savvy political move. Here's the downside. And I think it does take away the argument that he won't do anything about gas prices. I think the downside is it gives people an unrealistic expectation that President Biden or any future presidents will give in to the belly aching. We should be concentrating on alternative fuels. We should be concentrating on electrical cars, which is part of this Build Back Better deal, is making electrical EV vehicles more not only accessible, but also having the power stations, because many times there's just not many of them. One of the things about traveling with an EV vehicle that solely runs on electricity is not having enough availability on the open road.
For 200 miles.
You can find these places all over Charlotte. Like they're everywhere now. They're even in a big apartment complexes now. But once you leave a metropolitan area, you sometimes, and I know this from, I've got two friends that own EV vehicles, that sometimes even those pump stations are out of commission. Now, if there's not another one close by, then what? And so there's some significance, for this to be viable or be one of the viable options to get us off the codependency of oil that we've been on for so long. You do have to create a supply chain, a better supply chain and infrastructure.
Well, you and I have talked about this a lot, and maybe we can talk about this even more in depth on our second show. For those of you who are watching this show, we are going to have a Two Queers in a Truck show drop 15 minutes after this one on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that one. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about the Rittenhouse case and all kinds of stuff on that one. We'll see whatever we talk about. But the last one, Erica Smith, I thought that was wonderful, wonderful news. I caught it by surprise by reading an article in the Charlotte Observer, digital article. And then I was like, is it true? And then I Googled it, and because, I'm on the road, and it was wonderful. And today she kind of had her official announcement. I was on the Zoom call, and it was also a birthday kind of wishing her a birthday, which is tomorrow. She's a identical twin, by the way. And her sister was on the call as well. And then she had some people who submitted some videos to wish her happy birthday. And one of the persons, as I mentioned to you before the show, was Annie Lennox. I'm rarely starstruck. I was like, is that Annie Lennox? I had, really stare. And she sang her sister's, I don't know the title of that song, Sisters Doing It Amongst Ourselves. It was really, really sweet. So she wished her happy birthday. Apparently they had met each other a couple of weeks ago, and she's a huge supporter now of Erica Smith. So I agree with you. I think she's the front runner. Anyone who decides to run against her, I think North Carolina Democrats better treat her like a front runner, just like they would a white man running for Senate. I'll finish there.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll segue off that and save that for the second show. But exactly. But yeah, I second that. I think for one reason, for a lot of reasons, but for the thing is that district is very comfortable with her. She represented him on the state level for several years and did a phenomenal job. And is well liked and well respected, and she's an educator in that area. So I think it's amazing. I think the opportunity to take a person from the classroom and engineering field and put them into Washington and give a different angle, not only we can fixate on her gender and her ethnicity, But what a lot of people don't realize is how diverse her background is, and I'm
And how
super
accomplished she
excited.
is. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's
That's
had a
incredible.
brilliant career in so many
Yeah.
different facets. I had the opportunity to ask her a question in a Senate town hall 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and I was starstruck by not only her knowledge, depth of knowledge, not just on the question I asked, but all the questions. I believe they asked, there was a 15 question format from the general public. We each got to ask one question, and there wasn't an off, and she didn't see any of the questions before they got asked. Like, so she went blind into this, just like the other two Senate candidates did on different events. So she was not preempted in any way, and the amount of knowledge and the managing of what she knew, what and how why it was important was powerful. She will be a phenomenal representative for that district, and I think it'll be in my personal opinion, an upgrade.
Well, no, I agree with you, and I hope that she comes on this show. I actually reached out to her campaign and invited her to come on the show. I know she was a little hesitant when she was running for Senate because of the other two candidates that were running as well. But I hope she comes on it. But one of the things I was going to tell you, Jenny, is that she is a perfect example of the reason that you don't pull out of a race, even when people tell you you don't have a chance, because she visited 100 counties. Her name recognition has increased, and this kind of fell in her lap. No one expected Butterfield to retire. It was a surprise. Price retired, the other Democratic congressperson, but Butterfield made a decision to retire after they realized the districts were not going to change anymore until after the lawsuits. So they are going to have to run and then, of course, sue. They'll probably change again. But she was in that opportunity. And so this is the reason why I'm proud of her team. And she's got her infrastructure in place, her team. They just switched over from Senate to House. So congratulations to Erica Smith. That's wonderful. So let's talk about the supply chain. So, I Googled, I did the Google machine. Is that what you call it? The
Google machine, yes.
The Google machine.
I live without the Google machine.
Yeah, I did the Google machine about the supply chain, and we kind of have an idea about the supply chain. So the best definition, I think, for the supply chain that I was able to pull up on the Google's machine is basically what it says is it's the sequence of processes involved in the production and distribution of a commodity. Very simple. That's what a supply chain is. And so I do have a chart. And Jenny, tell me if you can see this on your end. I'm going to put up this chart first, and we will try to see if you can see this. Let's see here. This one, you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So how the supply chain works. This is kind of the circle of the supply chain: supplier, procurement, inventory, manufacturing, distribution, customer. That's one kind of how to explain. This is the second one. Supply chain starts off with raw materials, goes to supplier, manufacturing, distributor, retailer, and consumer. So in many ways, the supply chain is basically how you get the product from the raw materials to it being built to the supply chain has been in the news because a lot of the items that we consume here in the United States are not made in the United States. And as a result of that, the supply chain has been interrupted because of many reasons, because they're coming from other countries and the ports are so backlogged for many reasons. And as a result of that, they're not getting to the shelves. And if you watch the 60 Minutes interview, 60 Minutes did a story on it 2 Sundays ago about the supply chain. And people thought, well, the reason the supply chain was interrupted was because they can't find workers. That's not the case. That's a big myth. It's for many reasons. Truckers, a lot of the things they do is outdated. And as a result of that, they have enough truckers and drivers. They just can't pick them up because you have to watch it. And so a lot of the items are being left. If you're a major retailer like Walmart, you're going to get your items. But if you're a small business, you're not likely to get your items. So there's a lot of.
First of all, there's a lot of political motivation to give Biden a loss or a perceived loss, that he's incompetent or he's mishandling the American economy or whatever. So many conservatives in this country, specifically Republicans, have been pitching the idea that it's somehow Biden's fault. And so we can put that to bed really fast. Obviously, when you have an unprecedented economic and social change like a year and a half long pandemic, it changes your supply chain because part of the supply chain is human beings working in that deal. The second thing is, as we get back to some sense of normalcy, we also had a tremendous amount of demand this year. We had a tremendous amount of pent up demand. And when you it's kind of like holding back floodwaters. When you open up the floodgates, a lot of things can happen. And one of them is that you can only bring in foreign goods into a port at a certain amount of speed. Like you're going to, you have a bottleneck, and we had all these cargo ships with all these orders coming over the seas, and it wasn't amount of just you only have a certain amount of warehouses. Like if your product is larger than the amount of space that you have in the holding deal, those ships either have to float out at sea or hold it onto the ship, and then once they get it indoors, then they have to go through customs. There's a lot too. You just don't carry that right off a ship and right into a moving van and it goes across the country. There's a lot of steps in between legally to have our secure borders and all that, including shipboard inspections and bill of lading, and it's a very complicated process. Also too, there was a little bit of hijinks and chicanery going on, and maybe just a scooch of fuckery, because come to find out, certain warehouses were jimmying up the price for the dippery deal. They took advantage. There was some very opportunistic. And also Amazon got involved, and it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. They were in on some of that cash grab. So there was a lot going on. There was, and this brings me back to the gas prices. Gas prices don't always rise just because the supply goes down. Sometimes they just jimmy the price up even before the crude oil that you buy at, say, $15 a barrel goes to $30 a barrel, but you'll see prices immediately go up. And just the same way when Biden released, the 50 million barrels or however many he released this week, that didn't affect the prices now. It shouldn't. Because the oil that's sitting in, the gas station's reservoirs, that was bought 120, 150 days ago, at whatever price that was. So there is what I would call is a little bit of discretion and leeway, and a little bit of again some hijinks and some chicanery going on. All kinds of stuff going on. And so of course, this is one of the flaws of capitalism, is that when certain companies that maybe suffered some losses last year because of lack of demand found a way to hold some people up and all that. Now Biden did one thing, especially with the West Coast deal, especially with the Port of Long Beach.
The port, and LA also. In
LA as well, and the two deep water ports there, is he did get with his team, got with the Teamsters. They did open up an extra shift. They did pay for some overtime. The federal government also helped with some logistics and speeding up some processes. And immediately in the first 10 days, the holding supply reduced by 29%. And it also got a little oversight too. So a few people got called out on that, and a few companies got busted on that. And I'm sure there's going to be some investigations on maybe some price gouging and stuff like that probably happened. But long story short, a lot of the supply chain issues weren't necessarily because of any one thing, but there was definitely more into play with a little bit of naughtiness, so to speak, as well.
Well, I've always said, and we talked about this before, inflation has been, what is it, like technically a 30-year high at this moment. It's all relative because people are spending money that which means they're doing a little bit better. Salaries have raised. People are being paid more, so they're spending money. The best way to lower inflation and the best way to lower prices is to just not buy as much junk that you don't need. And the best way to lower gas prices, we know that because it happened during the pandemic when it started, is if you don't have to buy gas, they lower the price because that gas can't sit in that gas station for so long before it starts to actually evaporate. And so they're trying to move that gas.
And inflation, so I remember this was probably 2019 or 2020. I read a Wall Street Journal article. I think it was pre-pandemic, so I think it was 2019. They were lamenting how we've had almost minimal inflation on certain markets for almost 10 years since the Great Recession of George W. Bush and the following Obama-Biden administration that went in and rescued our economy that time too. And so, in fact, in certain parts, because of the recession, pricing and especially house pricing dropped dramatically in some parts of the country. And so we're kind of digging our hole out of that. And now that we've done so good in 2021, and for so many reasons, thanks to President Biden's leadership, and not having the other guy screwing it up, is we saw an excitement in the economy. It's been phenomenal. So we've also had some other things. House pricing in certain urban markets has gone way up over the last 10 years. Certain markets have gone up 150 to 250% in the last 10 years. Inflation, it's funny how they'll go nuts over gas prices going up 80 cents, but they won't talk about major cities where you have to make at least 22 to 24 dollars an hour just to afford an apartment. We don't talk about the inflation of real estate. That is literally the median house price 10 years ago was about 150 to 180,000 in all the major urban areas in the United States on average, and now it's well over 300,000.
Yeah,
and yet minimum wage hasn't seen an increase in 12 years, and so they don't talk about inflation in certain deals only when Democrats are present or only when it's convenient. But we still haven't addressed housing. We still haven't addressed minimum wage or livable wage. There's still so many things that we're kind of addressing even now. And so I always have to kind of call BS on the inflation deal.
Yeah.
Also, the used car market and the new car market also is a big part of the inflation cycle this time, because they were running low on electronic silicon chips, which drive all of our cars are now driving computers. And so less new cars were able to be produced, driving the used car market up. Actually, probably about 70% of that inflation is due to the used car market. Used cars across the board went up about 5% more than they normally do this year. So there was a lot of things in play. It's inflation and supply chain is not as simple as you can just point to one thing and say our economy is way too complicated for that.
Well, no, exactly. What you said, you hit the nail right on the head. But I just, from a political standpoint, which everything seems to be political today, there's nothing Biden is ever going to do that they're going to be happy with.
Oh, sure.
If you don't, I mean, it'll snow, it didn't snow enough. It'll rain, it's raining too much. And a perfect example is when these individuals that are really, really concerned about the supply chain, which we're all kind of concerned about that. They're so worried about Barbies and Nintendos being on the shelves at Walmart, and they're going to blame, for Christmas, they're going to blame Biden. If it's not there, Biden's the fault. But these same individuals were the same individuals that freaked out when we didn't have toilet paper on shelves. And we actually didn't have toilet paper on the shelves, and not one person blamed Trump. Not them, at least. And so
that's a mystery.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, so, we do have to put things in perspective. And so when someone is complaining about the supply chain. I get it. I understand that. And, do I like paying more for gas? Of course we don't. But I agree with you. I mean, it's very, very complicated.
Well, for the people that are complaining about the supply chain, one of the biggest things about a supply chain, and probably the most hardest thing to manage for any business, and is a hotel developer and manager, is labor.
Yes, exactly.
And you have a tough time having a lot of ready, available, healthy labor when you have a bunch of spread necks spreading around a deadly airborne virus. And so you can help
I wondered how long it would take
supply chain by wearing a mask.
Exactly.
When in public.
Yeah,
and getting your Fauciology and getting your booster if you've already gotten your Fauciology. And one of the biggest things you do is and Biden said this during the campaign, you can't have a stable economy while letting a airborne pandemic go wild. And, having this deadly virus just spreading around with not taking any precautions. He says, the number one thing I'm going to do for the economy is work the hardest to getting the vaccine distributed and make common sense measures to get our country healthy. And having over 1 million people died of this between the documented and undocumented cases. Over 1 million people have died, plus a lot of people that have died in the hundreds of thousands that couldn't get access to quality medical care, which is also in the supply chain. We can probably attribute at least 1.5 million deaths to COVID in some way, shape, or form, plus probably 10 to 15 million people at any one time are still fighting with long COVID. And the labor shifts, there's over 140,000 American kids that lost a parent or a guardian in the last 18 months. So those caregivers went away. That's going to have a dynamic shift. That's going to change all kinds of things. Even grandparents that were taking care of grandkids while their parents were at work. If they die of COVID, how's that? And so all these things are factors. And the fact that 1.5 million people, because of COVID, one way or the other, are not here anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of those people work jobs. Even retired people worked part-time jobs at Walmart or Target or, a ticket taker at the movie theater. When those people disappeared forever, they're not coming back. Yeah. That affects your economy. Premature death is a huge damaging factor in an economy. So there's a lot of reasons why we had problems.
Especially in a country that is a low birth rate country.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we are, and for some, and you touched on this last show or the one before, you talked about that. And people have now I've been seeing articles about that people, I think people are having a very difficult time understanding that the birth rate in America has been low for like 20 years. And as a result of that, that is impacting our workforce and so forth. I mean, we've been expecting this. They think because there's so many millennials are out there that we've got all this fresh millennial. We have 20 years worth of birth rates that are low, and it is the boomers. It's
you got
shot. Yeah.
The biggest generation that we've ever had before the millennials and the zennials. The baby boomers were the biggest generation America ever had. That's why they called them baby boomers, is because
it was a baby.
We're all happy we survived World War II. People came home and they do what they do.
That's right.
There was no cable TV back then too. So they had lots of babies, and my parents were those war babies. My mom's dad came home, and a few months later, my mom was born. Magically in 1946 of all things. And he was a World War II veteran, and so prime example of that whole generation. Well, now almost all those people are retiring, or have retired, or passed away, of whatever,
and if they're a Trump boomer, they passed away.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them. I mean, this year.
Make light of that, but in all seriousness,
but it's the truth.
Many of them deniers, many of the COVID deniers,
and also their ability to work full time too. So when you're talking about people, there's a reason why there's a retirement age, or there's a reason why. So as you're losing that huge generation of labor, that's now pretty much the majority of that generation is retired or working part-time or starting easing into those retirement years. Your available labor goes down dramatically with each passing year. So then, the next generation, Generation X, which is Christian and I's generation, is extremely small. The baby boomers had very few kids.
Yeah,
especially
so
white Americans. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
we were the first downward trending, and then we had more kids than our generation, and so the millennials boosted up.
Exactly.
The Zennials is a good sized generation, but they're still not really of age to be in the workforce.
They haven't made up with all the other generations before that. Yeah,
and many of the modern powers are facing the same thing. Canada is facing this. The EU is facing this. China, all these post-World War II emerging powers, these superpowers, many of these countries had very low birth rates in Gen X. We had a worldwide celebration with the baby boomer babies, and then we all realized, oh, that's too many people, and like China had the one child moratorium for decades and just now lifted it. But I think the last few years, but I mean, those babies aren't going to be born, even if they have a ton of babies, it's going to be a while before they catch up. So they're very top heavy. And so, that does affect supply chain. There's so many things that go into it, but the number one factor is labor. And number two is people can only work so fast. So when all these shipping containers come in and hit the port for increased fall demand because of the holiday season, and this thing pent up demand of hopefully emerging out of a worldwide pandemic, those two factors alone really just created a bottleneck. You only shove through so many dollies through a port of call before you go, okay, we can only do so much per day.
But I think what makes most Americans, I think we're going to see this in the next couple of months. I think what makes most Americans a little bit more comfortable. I'd rather have a supply chain perceived issue or inflation or things like that. I'd rather have it under someone like Biden than Trump, because at least Biden is addressing it. He's talking about it. Trump just ignored it and did all these crazy, we're going to make America, but did nothing.
Well, my question is, name me a Republican president that did address economic issues. Like, I mean, Republicans have spent tax dollars on cockamamie military and violence schemes like a bunch of drunken sailors on shore leave for the last 50, 60 years. I mean, Reagan spent it like we were going to stop making tanks. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to get 5 of those and 10 of those. And it just started with him, quadrupled down and just, ran all kinds of overruns. I mean, and then Trump's tax scheme from 4 years ago, giving away $2 trillion.
It was a huge fiasco. And they're finding out now that we actually lost 1 point something. I don't know how much money we've lost. And the companies that got that huge tax didn't pay any revenue. The goal was it would be trickle down. Remember that trickle down? That's this. They call it zombie. Zombie economics. They always, every couple of years, people talk about trickle down. It's never worked in the history of the America trickle down. I don't know. Anyone who's from Texas knows former Senator Phil Gramm used to preach trickle down economics, and then it blew up in their face. During Bush, I think, and he said, that's a whole nother show. But listen, we only have about 10 minutes left. I'm not concerned. Biden did say when he spoke, I believe it was Friday or last week when he signed the infrastructure bill, he gave another speech as well. He talked about, he got off the phone with the leaders of Walmart and Target and the big retailers, and they said that they have all the items that they need. What I've told people, do you really need 5 Barbies? I mean, And then if you're gonna buy,
First of all,
if you're gonna buy 5 Barbies, don't complain about the price of Barbies. I mean,
well,
let's put things in perspective. I don't milk. I get it.
There's a lot of truth to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so funny, and I put this response on Facebook several times about a month ago when people were like losing their minds over gas prices, and I go, you guys will go to a friggin' brewery here in Charlotte, which we're known for how many breweries we have, and spend $6, $8, $9, $10 on a friggin' beer or a craft cocktail. Not even think twice. Spend $100 bill going out, $150. Not even think twice about it.
Yep.
You pay $10 more a week on gas, and the sky's falling.
Exactly.
And so you gotta meter out like either they don't fathom. I think people do two things. I think first of all they don't fathom what they're really saying. They just hear it on Fox News or OAN or whatever, and they just parrot what somebody else that's just a empty suit talking head that just parrots some kind of think tank thing that somebody dreams up that all the Chicken Littles come out and say the sky's falling, when really in reality, the people that are complaining usually are the ones that can afford to go out to eat and drop $200 on a Ruth Chris steak meal. So I always because I look when I see somebody posting about it, I go onto their timeline and I see where they've been. So if they posted a lot of going out, and I'm like, you just spent $200 on a steak dinner for 4 the other night, and you posted about it, and you're worried about gas, like 80 cents a gallon more.
Oh, exactly. So, I've gotten a lot of really good advice, but one of the best advice to date I've ever received is from my mother-in-law, 86-year-old mother-in-law. And she says, tell me what you want, and I will tell you how you can live without it.
Right. And I was just in Target today, and
and I love Target. I know you like Target.
The shelves were completely full. They've been completely full. I haven't seen any empty shelves whatsoever. No restaurants are running out of food. I think about how shallow Americans are, and I think back because we're both old enough to remember the Soviet Union and red lines and shortages and stuff like
and
that.
And rationing and so forth.
The rationing and all that happened in the 1980s when the Soviet Union's infrastructure was collapsing. And I laugh because, we can't get our PlayStation on time. We may get it in January instead of December, and the world is falling apart. But there has been and there is currently countries that drinking water, actual safe drinking water, is a big deal. Like I watched this one reality show. It's actually one of the singers from Kiss, Gene Simmons.
Oh, I like him. Yeah.
His wife, I guess he technically did too. They sponsored several kids that lived in Africa, and he'd been working real hard, and she surprised him with I guess kind of a vacation, and went to go visit the kids they sponsored in Africa. I'll never forget this teenage girl. And they got to the village and they were talking to her, and they noticed something. They're like, well, where's your mom? And she died of the common cold because the village had such infrequent transportation to the area hospital that was like 25 or 50 miles away. And, obviously she was sick. So she died of just the common cold.
Yeah.
And wow, I paused that show because I'd recorded it.
Yeah.
And I was like, we complain about our neighbors asking us to do the courtesy of wearing a mask during a deadly airborne pandemic. But there are people on this planet that will die of strep throat, the common cold, not because they don't have doctors in their country, but the doctors are 25 to 50 miles away, and nobody in that village has a car. Nobody has access to transportation to get her there safely. And I think that show, every time I think about modern inconveniences I think of that show.
Yeah.
And how strangely that impacted me, but I felt like a ton of bricks hit me on my head. And I think coming into Thanksgiving, and this will air the day before Thanksgiving, and many will watch it during the holiday, we should be more thankful and more grateful for what we do have. We should be more grateful for each other, that we're coming out on the other side of this pandemic. Many of us got caught up in COVID, got sick. Many fell victim. I've got 2 loved ones that passed away of COVID. They aren't here anymore. And we need to think before we bitch.
Yeah.
We're a little spoiled.
Amen. Hey, what a wonderful way to end the show. I'm thankful for you, Jenny. I can say that. Thankful for everyone who watches us. I do want to give a quick shout out. I want to thank Ann Clark who joined us last week on our show about Anti-Bullying Week. We've got, I think, 1,700 views on that one, and still climbing. So I knew that after we'd start getting those climbing. It was a very, very good show. I watched it several times, and it was very informative. Next week, just to let you know, because we only have about 2 minutes left, next week start December shows. Our first show of the month will be, do you have your COVID-19 booster shot? I think we may have Dr. B back on for that show. And we'll talk about whether we record that on our regular time or we have to do the night before. We'll figure that out. We'll work it out. The second show of the month of December, it'll be the part 2 series of Is PBS Still Taxpayer-Funded All-White TV? We'll be talking about that. The third show of the month, Who Was Brown Jesus? People have that conversation this time of year, especially in Black and brown houses, or we want to know, was Jesus blue-eyed and blonde hair? Nope. So, I actually had that conversation with my brother here in Texas the other day. And then the third show of the month is going to be our annual, the Festivus Show 2021. Jenny has her list of grievances. I'm sure she's
got a whole lot of things I need to talk to you about.
She's got a whole lot of that was on TBS the other day, by the way, the Festivus Show.
Oh.
And then the last show, we have actually 5 Wednesdays in December. We'll say goodbye to 2021 and get ready for 2022. So that's going to be our next shows. I do want to thank you. Stay on, Jenny, for this show. We want to say goodbye here in a second, but stay on so we can do the promo. And then we'll record our second show, our 2 Queers in the Truck. And we'll make that a short one because I know everyone's got to get ready for Thanksgiving. But once again, thank you so much for the time. And Jenny, tell us where you're going to be in 30 seconds or less, and then we can end this show.
Well, I'm going to be chilling at the house on Thursday for the most part. I'll probably pop out and go to Eat, Gay, Love. And they do a deal at Billy's Sunday this Thursday. And you can pick up complimentary food. And it's a thing that Brian Dubois, a good friend of mine, has been doing for several years as a community to help the LGBT, specifically the LGBT community. Even though they won't check your gay card at the door, but they do this for the community because many of us do not have family that will see us during Thanksgiving. And so this is a way, if you want to eat there or you want to take it home or whatever, but it's a open community thing to help feed and maybe stave off a little bit of loneliness for the people that are lonely on Thanksgiving. For me personally, I like to hunker down and binge watch some shows. I am so involved.
Well, you work so much.
So I work so much. I'm plugged into so many different events. Me personally, I've done the family thing for decades, and now this is the one time of the year I take Thanksgiving off every year in every way, shape, or form. I practically disappear. I turn into a hermit, which is very unlike me in regular life. So it's my one day of the year where you can message me, and I won't guarantee I will message you back real quick. It's really my power down day before that last push till the end of the year. Honestly, I look forward to this way more than Christmas Day. From the rest and relaxation deal. So if people must know.
Well, I am still on the road. I am in West Afghanistan. I'll be celebrating Thanksgiving here in what we call Texas, or West Afghanistan. I'll be watching the Dallas Cowboys play on Thanksgiving Day. It's a tradition all around the country. We
They
hope
still have a
show
football
up.
team?
A foosball? What do you say? A foosball team? That's right.
That's the devil. That's the devil.
That's right. And then I will be back on the road again next week, and just in time to get back for our next show next week. So with that, I do want to wish everyone a happy holiday season, happy Thanksgiving. There's several holidays that occur this time of year, and we will leave with this music if you can hear it. Let's see if that works, Jen. That's how I would be playing I don't know what that is. All right, bye y'all.
Bye,
See you
y'all.
next week.
Be great.